Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to plant herbs in water using the Dooda jar. So if you have one for yourself, you can follow along to set yours up, or you can check out the link in the description if you want to grab one for yourself. So I actually started inventing this because my friend kept asking me how I kept my plants alive because she's not really a green thumb, and she kept buying the plants from the grocery store that come in the little pots like the herbs, and they kept getting pests or they kept just dying. She didn't know how often to water it, and so I decided to invent a solution that could help people who haven't really grown herbs before or aren't having a lot of luck keeping them alive, and to be able to invent something that you can just kind of set and forget it. You don't have to learn a lot of new rules. You don't have to remember to water it all the time. And it's just a bit more forgiving for beginners. So that's what I hope that I've achieved here. So what you can do with the Dooda jar is you get any old jar that you have lying around. You're able to put this net pot mechanism inside of the jar, put some perlite in, sprinkle your seeds on top, and then they'll grow. And you don't have to remember to replace the water, except about once a week is ideal. So you can replace the water every single day. The plant will love that because new water has more oxygen in it, and the roots are actually taking out the oxygen from the water. And so if you replace it every day, you'll definitely get the best results, but you can honestly go a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks without replacing the water, and it will be fine. Like everything, there's optimal ways to grow if you want to get the very best result, but the whole point of hydroponics and doing it in this way is that if you do forget about it, your plant isn't going to die. Like if you forget to water your herbs for 2 weeks in dirt, they'll be dead. There's no resurrecting them. So these are some of my successful ones. So these are just some of my successful herbs I've got here. I've got basil, I've got dill, and I've got parsley growing. And I'm going to show you how to set yours up. What you'll need to begin is 2 old jars, the Dooda jar, so that is the screw top and also the net pot that comes with it. Some perlite, about half a cup. What you'll need is enough to fill up your net pot, depending on what size you've got, but enough just to fill it up. So it should just be a handful or 2 of perlite. A packet of seeds that you want. I recommend basil is a very rewarding one to grow, or parsley and dill have been really good as well. You're going to need some water, and you will need some liquid nutrients. You don't need liquid nutrients for the first couple of weeks. Once you start seeing root growth like this one here, then you're going to have to start putting nutrients in the water, and that's how the plant is fed. So if you don't put nutrients, they will grow to a certain extent, but they'll just, like I said before, it's not optimal. So they'll kind of be wilty, they might stop putting out new growth, and if you give them food, then they'll grow big and strong. You can get liquid nutrients from your local like Lowe's or Bunnings, depending where you live, or you can get it from a hydroponic store, which is what I suggest. Most of you will have a hydroponic store nearby. They're a super niche store, but I found that there's been one in every city I've ever been in. It doesn't matter what brand you get, just look for something that says it's for hydroponics and it's for herbs or leafy growth. Those are the key words to look for. And this is the one that I actually recommend. It's Growth Technologies Herb Focus. And this is the best one that I've used so far. So once you have all your ingredients, we're ready to go on to the next step. So I've gathered all the resources that I'm going to need. I've got some perlite. This is the perlite that I use. It's from Brunnings. You can use any plant-safe perlite, and you can skip to the end. There'll be a section on different substrates you can use if you don't want to use perlite. My seeds I'm going to do today are lemon basil. So that should be nice. I haven't planted these in this system yet. This is the sprout mate. This is how it comes. It comes with a screw. This is called the thread. It comes with a thread, and it comes with a net pot. So how the thread works is you screw it onto your jar, number 1, and then you can screw jar number 2 on top. And so this creates a greenhouse system for when you're sprouting the seeds. So the next thing you'll need are 2 jars. So depending on what size you order, we offer a pasta sauce jar, standard mason, and wide mouth mason. So this is just the standard size jar in Australia. So any like standard pasta sauce that you get from the grocery store, you'll be able to use for this. This is what a standard mason one looks like. So you can see it's just a little bit bigger, and these are the standard mason jars. Any type will do. And today I'm using the wide mouth ones. So you can see then this is the size difference between standard and wide mouth. It's just a bit bigger. So you can see here, these are the 3 sizes. It's all to do with mouth size. So you can actually have huge jars as long as they have the standard mason or the wide mouth mason opening, then you can use this on any jar you want. And the last 2 ingredients you'll need is just fresh water. This is just an old bottle that I've filled with water, and some liquid nutrients. Now that you've gathered all of your items, you can screw on the thread part onto the first jar that you're going to use. And then you pop this mesh pot, you just pop it inside. So it should look something like that. The next step is to put water in. I put water in as step 2 and not the perlite first, so that you can actually see how high you've filled it. Because if you put the perlite in before the water, then it's difficult to see how far you've filled up the jar. And you want to stop until it's about halfway up the thread. Now, in this step, you can add nutrients. I would do a half dilution of the nutrients, but nutrients aren't strictly necessary until you see roots forming, because the seeds actually have enough nutrients for this little seedling to sprout. And then once it starts putting out roots is the point that it needs more nutrients added. So the first little bit can be just plain water, and I've had better success that way. So you can see that the water level is halfway up the mason jar. You want to make sure it's up the mason jar so that the perlite is wicking water up to the seeds. Because if you do it too low, then your seeds might dry out before they get to germinate. Okay, now that we have our water in the jar, you want to just add perlite. You want to leave at least 1/2 centimeter of space in your jar. Just do a layer of perlite that the seeds will be able to sit on. So you can see I've slightly overfilled the water here because you don't want the perlite to look like it's floating in a pond. You want it to be damp, but you want the water level to probably only be like 1 or 2 mils less than this. So I'm actually going to take out this net pot and take out just a tiny bit of water so that the seeds don't drown. You don't want the seeds to actually be sitting in submerged water. If you find you've overfilled and it looks like the seeds are probably going to be sitting in a bit of a pond, then you want to just take off the screw cap, take out the net pot, and just pour just a tiny bit out. You find you only need a few drops. And then you can just pop it back in. Now you can see I'm much happier with this level of water. There's still water there, but the seeds are going to be able to have oxygen around them. You just don't want to submerge seeds completely in the water. Okay, so now that we're happy with the level of the water and the perlite, we can screw this jar back on. Now comes the exciting part. You got to put the seeds in. So I find that I prefer to over sow. So I put a few too many seeds in, and then you see which ones will germinate. And then once you have little sprouts, you can thin them out just by pinching off the leaves of the ones you don't want to keep growing. I would say in a wide mouth mason jar, you probably only want like 2 basil plants to be growing. Once they get mature, they're going to get really big. So you don't actually want loads and loads of seeds growing all from the same jar, because although while they're small, it looks good, they'll quickly get overcrowded. And then if there's too many, they actually won't grow very big or very strong. You can read on the back of the seed packet that you bought, and it'll usually say how far away. So this one says 20 centimeters, which means that when you're planting it, pretend this was a big garden bed, you plant one and then 20 centimeters later you plant another. So clearly this is not 20 centimeters. So it's meant to only have 1 or 2. I'm gonna put probably 5 seeds in though, just so that I make sure that I get the right germination, because these seeds are super cheap and I really enjoy seeing all the little sprouts come up, and then you can pinch them off later. Okay, I lied. I'm probably putting lots because I poured it out on my hand. And that's just another tip for seeds. If you've never bought seeds before, once they're on your hand, if you have moisture on your hand, you have oils on your hand, which are now going onto the seeds. So if you put it back in that packet, the packet's gonna have a bit of moisture in there contaminating it, and say you leave it for another 6 months or a year, those seeds might go bad because the seeds are supposed to be stored in a completely dry, cool, dark space. So if you put like the moist seeds that you've back in just from your hand, like it might not seem like it's moist, they can actually turn all those seeds bad, which I just found out through all of my climbing peas that have all gone bad this season. I planted them all and none of them came up. So if I pour out too many, I just put them all in because I quite like seeing all the little sprouts come up. But it's each to their own. You can store them in a Glad bag or some other way if you'd prefer. Now you can see I've sprinkled these seeds on, spaced them apart as well as I could, and I want to put a little bit more perlite on top. The reason for this is that when the sprouts come out, you want them to have something to be able to lean on, because they're used to coming out like 1/2 centimeter from dirt, and so those little stems kind of need something to anchor to. So you just sprinkle a little bit more on. Okay, great. So you can still peek the seeds through there, but they'll have just an extra layer of perlite to be able to go through. So now you've got that layer of perlite, and because the water should be touching the bottom layer of perlite, it should wick up the water so that the seeds have a moist environment to grow in. You don't want them to be completely submerged because then they might drown, but you want them to always be damp. So at this point, you're going to put the top cap on to create a greenhouse effect, and this will help the water level not to go down too fast, because if you weren't to have a top cap, you would have to keep topping up this water every single day. It's still something you can totally do if you really want to baby your plants or you're really excited about it. You can take the cap off every single day, have a look, and if you notice that the water has gone down, it's not touching the bottom of the net pot anymore, definitely just top it up a little bit. Just put a few, like a little sprinkling from the tap in there, so that while the roots are forming, you want there to always be water touching the bottom. And then you'll find that the roots actually grow into the water, like this one, and then you can let it go further and further down, and the humidity from this area will actually keep those roots hydrated. So you don't have to remember to water it all the time, because if it drops down, it's okay. You can just top it up once a week. So there you have it. You've finished, and you can put this in a bright spot. What you're going to want to do now is put this in a bright spot. So vegetables and herbs definitely need a lot of light to live. So I find that my windowsill is more than adequate. It gets bright indirect light all day, which means that it's well lit, but it doesn't have like direct sun rays on it, because those direct sun rays can be very, very harsh on little leaves, and so you can get like burning. But a lot of things, like I live in the Australian summer, and basil does really well with direct light all day. So I would err on the side of more light than less light. And if you don't have any light at all, you can actually buy a grow light. There are some really affordable options out there, and I'll have them linked in the description if you're interested in getting a grow light. And that's a really good way to do it as well. I grew this basil and this parsley under a grow light, and I grew this dill on my windowsill. And they're all going fantastically. So you have lots of options. If you live, if you're sharing a house and you only have your bedroom and it doesn't have a good window, then you can definitely get a little grow light lamp even. It'll sit on your desk. Or if you have a nice window somewhere in your house that faces the sun most of the day, then I'd definitely pop it there, because it gives a lot of joy as well to the windowsill. So the next thing I want to cover is watering. So you don't have to replace this water more than once a week, or once every 2 weeks. Depending on how much evaporation has happened. You don't want it to get too low. Like it can get to there, or even to maybe 3/4 of the way, but I would try to keep it at about 90% if you remember. But if it goes all the way to the bottom, don't despair, just fill it up and it should be just fine, depending how long. I mean, if you've left it for maybe 3 months, that might be a little bit too long. But when I say top it up, I mean replace the water. That's quite important. So you can unscrew the thread, lift out your pot, pour out the water. If it's got algae or any green growth, it's actually fine, and it's not damaging for the roots at all to have algae or green growth. But give it a little scrub, and just top it up with fresh water with some nutrients in it. You can replace the water as often as you want. You can do it daily. You can do it hourly if you want. There's no such thing as over replacing the water. And just make sure, so when you replace the water, it'll just add extra oxygen, and the roots will really enjoy that. So if your plant is looking a bit sad, definitely try replacing the water more often. Don't give it too strong of nutrients. If it's looking a bit sad after you start giving it nutrients, maybe cut back the amount that you're giving it to maybe a half strength. And make sure that it's in really bright light, because that's another reason. If it's really leggy, like you find that there's a big stem with a tiny leaf and it's very long and it's kind of flopped over, that means that it hasn't had enough light. So you need to find a spot that's a bit brighter for it. Now I want to show you the intermediate phase. So we have the beginning phase, and we have kind of near the end phase. These are still quite small plants, but they've been going for about a month now. And this is the intermediate phase. So this guy has been sitting on my windowsill, and I'll take the cap off and I'll show you. He's got little sprouts. So that's what it's going to look like when it's in its intermediate phase. He doesn't have any roots going down yet, so I'm making sure that the water stays up, touching the bottom of the mesh, and that's what the sprouts look like, and he's really happy, and he's going really well. This is more parsley, so I'm very excited to see him grow even bigger and stronger. And I keep the lid on until the until the leaves are getting a bit too big to stay inside the jar, and then I can take it off, because once it has a pretty good root system forming, then you're able to take it off because the roots are sucking up the water a bit better. So if the water level drops, it's not as bad of a situation. And I like to keep this on when I want to keep the water level pretty consistent, because it'll evaporate and then drip back down, evaporate, drip back down. So we won't be losing as much water when the lid is on. So I said I was going to talk about the different substrates you can add. So the substrate that I recommend is perlite. That has the best rate of success. You can put coco coir in there, but coco coir absorbs a lot of water. So I find in this system, it actually stays too damp and it gets prone to mold because it never dries out. Whereas perlite is not actually moisture absorbing. So it dries out fairly quickly, and I haven't had any problems with mold at all. Another option is vermiculite. I've had a lot of success with vermiculite as well. I just found a slightly better results with perlite, but if you prefer vermiculite, then go ahead with that. I tried paper towel, and I found that the roots actually couldn't pierce the paper towel very easily. So you could do different experiments with maybe tissue or something like that, just laid across the bottom of the pot. Because the seeds would be so close to the water source, you'd have to really keep the water level extremely perfect. And I prefer the perlite, where you can kind of have a centimeter of leeway of forgetting about it and then topping it up and forgetting about it, topping it up. Whereas with tissue paper, you really have to like stay on it and make sure that tissue paper is always damp, but not too damp. You can't use soil because it will rot. So soil is supposed to dry out because it's got a lot of microbes and bacteria in it. And so if you leave it in this system where it's damp all the time, then it will create a lot of problems. You'll probably get fungus gnats. It's like a breeding ground for mold. The water gets really full of algae, and it's just not made for this kind of system. The next substrate that you could try is rock wool. I've never tried it. I'm in the process of getting some, so I can try that too, because that's built for hydroponic systems. It's a very popular way to start seeds. So I think rock wool will probably do fantastically, but I've never tried it. So try at your own risk, and please tag us at #SproutMate so that I can see your results. Because this is all just one big experiment. And another one that's been suggested is fluval stratum or mini leca beads. They're quite similar. So they're both kind of basically tiny rocks, similar to perlite, except you can see that perlite is more, it looks like a tiny rock, but you can crush it very easily into a powder like that. So fluval stratum is a substrate for growing aquatic plants or aquarium stuff. So with that, I think it will probably work very well, but I don't know that it's food grade or that it's okay to grow food in. So definitely kind of do your own research on that. And leca, I actually love using leca, but it is definitely too big. So this is the leca that I use. You can see here it's about 1 centimeter round. I've got bigger leca too, that's about 2 centimeters round. And so I think that if you found leca that was maybe less than 1/2 centimeter in diameter, then, or in radius? No, in diameter, then I think that will probably work really lovely, because it's similar to perlite, except it absorbs a lot more water, and so it's perfect for half hydroponic systems, which is what this is. So if you try any other substrates, please document your progress. I'd love to see like all these little experiments all around the world. That would be really, really exciting. And thank you so much for listening to me and for supporting me. I hope you all can grow herbs on your countertop and have a really good time with it. Don't forget to @us on any social media. I'm on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, all @LucyTheMaker. Don't hesitate to make posts and ask me questions, or just leave comments on my posts, because I love this community that we're building. So good luck, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. This is my channel, so I post content all the time about plant-related things and different experiments that I'm working on. So it would mean a lot if you liked and subscribed to this channel. All right, bye.